So, one thing that is incredibly important for you to understand if you're going to invest in real estate, if you're going to buy, whether it's buy and hold, fix and flip, uh, is it takes a while sometimes to find a really good deal that's worth buying. When I was growing up, I was learning this idea that don't be surprised if you have to look at 100 houses to buy one. I first heard that from Robert Kiyosaki. I've since heard it from other people. Are we all repeating it from him? I don't know. But here's what I do know, it's actually true. Don't be surprised if you've got to look at 100 opportunities just to buy one. Now, can you buy more than one in 100? Absolutely. And we have many times. But when it gets slow, so to speak, it may not be as slow as you think. It just may not be it may just be the opportunities aren't as great as you like. A lot of times people get involved in investing. They want to wholesale. They want to be bird dogs and right because they just need cash quick, and in that scenario they'll look at 10, 15, 20 opportunities, then they give up. They literally just give up. They're done. Okay. And as a result of that, they don't get any deals, and that's it. They're done. They're gone. They're quit. And you don't want to be that person. Okay. Real estate sometimes takes time to find a quality deal. So you've got to make a lot of offers, and when you make a lot of offers, you got to look at a lot of properties and make a lot of offers. Okay. One of the first things I learned was you're not making offers, you're really not doing anything. Okay. Because that's where it starts. You've got to make offers. Even if they're all getting rejected, at least you're in the game playing. Okay. Because things change, circumstances change, and some of those things you get rejected will come back to life. Okay. So, why is it 100 though? And so, what I did is I wrote down just a couple of reasons real quick that I thought I would share on why sometimes it takes 100 to buy just one deal. And so, let's go through a few of these reasons. First is location. Okay. Location, location, location. The longer I do this business, the more I value location. It is too easy to buy properties in less than great areas and somehow convince yourself it's going to be a great deal. Now, sometimes it will be a great deal. A lot of times, though, it doesn't quite end up being that. You end up spending more time than you thought on it, more headache on it, more resources, capital, more fixing, whatever it is. Okay. So location really matters a lot. Okay. And as you do this business more and more, you value it more and more, and you realize, okay, there's some deals where the numbers look like they work, but I'm not buying it because of the location. Those are great wholesale opportunities, by the way, because someone else will probably do it. But you've kind of reached a point where you're like, you know what? I'm not going to deal with that. Okay, there's too much brain power, and brain power is something you don't always capture real well on a spreadsheet. But brain power is time, and it's very expensive. In fact, it's your most expensive thing that you have at your disposal. So location is a big deal. Another reason why sometimes takes 100 just to buy one is rehab costs. Construction costs are very expensive right now compared to where they were just a few years ago. And it's totally shifted what we can and can't do when we're remodeling properties, even if we're going to keep them to rent. Okay. I've seen it's amazing to me how a lot of investors have gotten used to like these low to medium single digit returns for a property. And you sit there and you're like, if you're going to make 5% on a property, the stock market is not really that bad of an idea. I'm like, well, but you can't control the stock. Well, you can put money in an index fund and let's say you get 8%, but how much work are you putting into that? Zero, right? You just watch it, and if it goes down, just don't sell, wait till it goes up, right? It's zero effort. So, again, if you're going to be doing property investing, you better be in double digit returns. Otherwise, there might be some better options that have a whole lot effort, whole lot less effort associated with them. Okay, so be careful. So back to the point, the rehab costs, right? It's made these things expensive. Don't let you get used to low single digit returns. It's not worth it. Okay. I always tell people your worst case scenario should be 10% net. That should be your worst case. If a deal's not going to give you 10% net, worst case, flip or rental, renegotiate a better deal or walk away. There's better options out there. Okay, another reason is sometimes there's just a lack of quality comparables. Okay, it's amazing how many times people try to flip a house and there's one comparable. It's just a tough sell. Okay, we're not going to say it can't be done. It absolutely can be done, but it is a tough sell. It's tough to get them funded. It's tough to convince people on the sales side. So unless you get that really special buyer that really wants what you just spent all this time and effort into, it's tough. It's tough. So we like properties that have a lot of comparables. It's just you make your life easier. Don't make it harder because you have some kind of emotional attachment to the property, or you're convincing yourself these numbers are great when the numbers or the lack of numbers is clearly stating otherwise. Okay, so have do properties that have lots of comparables. If there's not many, it's almost always best to hold that property as a rental until a better day comes. So, another one is the ROI is too low. We kind of talked about that a minute ago, right? Just the deal works, but the ROI is too low. So, no, it actually doesn't work, right? I got this single digit return. Another thing that makes deals harder to find is just you get into due diligence and you thought you were going to have a $40,000 rehab, and then you bring a contractor through, and oh, wait a minute, it's actually $65,000. Throws the whole thing off. Very common problem, especially if you've not done a lot with construction. Another thing that will throw this off may not be repairs. It might be, hey, there's some HOA covenants which kill deals. That's very common, in particular in some states where there's a lot of HOA communities. The deal works, and then you look at the HOA and you're like, no, it doesn't. We looked at a condo not too terribly long ago, and it was a $1,200 a month HOA bill that was coming due because they had just raised the rates. I think it was something like 33%, something like that. It went from like 800 to 1,200, I think, or something close to that. And at 1,200 a month, you're like, completely killed the deal. Otherwise, the deal was fine. In fact, if the HOA had stayed at 800, it might have been okay, maybe tight, but at 1,200, it's like, nope, not gonna happen. Okay, so sometimes it's not repairs, it's something external like HOA. It could be, something that's going on in a community where property is, things that are coming down the pipe. Maybe they're going to widen a road and that's going to cause some challenges. Okay, who knows? Okay, so due diligence is really important, right? Not just the property, but what's going on around the property or what is the property tied to that could impact it. Okay, another one is, financing fell apart. Okay, why does the financing fall apart? Because a lot of lenders are maybe not always the best underwriters, right? And I don't say that to be negative; it's just true. Okay, so they promise the world, they get you into the deal, and then you're into it, and they're like, well, actually, we're gonna need to do this. You're gonna have to bring another 20%, or maybe they just won't do it at all, or they're gonna make your reserve or I'm sorry, they'll make their reserve for repairs smaller, so you got to spend more money on the rehab, and just all kinds of things happen. So sometimes the lenders can mess things up, which is why it's good if you're going to borrow capital. Have more than one set of eyes look at it until you really are super confident in your numbers. I tell people you need to underwrite for the lend. You need to underwrite better than they underwrite it. Okay, take less. Make sure you're into the deal for even lower risk than they're willing to take on it. That's really the bet. Instead of trying to make something work, whatever they're willing to do, be less than that. That's going to be a winning formula, not just for you, but for them. Everybody wins. Okay. Reduces risk significantly. Another thing that's very common that maybe makes it take longer to get a deal is just simple lack of negotiation skills. You've got to learn to negotiate with people, okay? And negotiation, it's not 2 + 2 = 4 or 3 × 3 = 9. It's not a math formula. You're dealing with people. People are imperfect. People are a little crazy. People can be messy. They can be problematic, challenging. And by the way, that they're not even necessarily trying to be those things. Just they're doing this thing called life, and they've got their own pressures and challenges. And so, when you negotiate, you're never really just negotiating numbers. You're negotiating how to solve problems. And that's how we get the best deals is by solving problems, not by just talking about numbers back and forth. Okay, so really learn to become a good negotiator. Literally, deals die every day because of lack of negotiation skills. Whether it's on the investor side, this happens with realtor deals all the time because I learned how to be a realtor, but just because you're a realtor doesn't mean you know how to negotiate. In fact, very often that is not the case. And really, that's often the case for most people. Most people don't go study the skill of negotiation. Okay? It's just a fact. Um, so this messes deals up. So learn to be a good negotiator. Be that person that solves the problem rather than creates it through a lack of knowledge of this critical skill. Okay. Another one that sometimes kills deals. Sometimes someone else is just willing to pay more. You're looking, you're doing due diligence, maybe, but you haven't under contract yet, and someone else comes along and they're just going to pay more. And sometimes sellers will just take it, right? You're taking your time, you're being diligent, you're being a good, studious buyer to make sure you do things right so that it works for everyone. And then some person comes in and says, oh, I'm just going to pay 10% more. And they're just like, sorry, we're going to go with the other person. It happens. It's okay. It happens. When that happens, by the way, keep following up because sometimes the people that do that don't follow through and can't close. So, definitely put those in your follow up when that happens. And then sometimes it's as simple as just price, right? Like some sellers are just not realistic. Uh, you know, it's never been more common because of today's economy at the time of this recording for people to be Googling can't sell house. And the reason I can't sell the house is because they want more money than it's worth. It's as simple as that. Okay, with the current buy, and it's a buyer's market in a lot of places, and when you don't have leverage, you don't have leverage. So you got to adapt, and sometimes sellers don't want to pivot, they don't want to adapt. So yeah, they can't sell the house, and they're probably not going to sell the house. So sometimes it's just price, and so when you're dealing with price, you play the follow-up game. Sometimes it just takes time. Okay, you can do all the things right, so to speak, and they still say no. Okay, fine, right? Just don't get frustrated by it. Just add them to the follow up schedule. It's just part of the game. It's just part of the game. So those are just some of the reasons why when you start taking all those, and there's other reasons, right? But the key here is again, don't be surprised if you got to look at 100 houses to buy one because there's a myriad of reasons why this happens. And as long as you stick with it, though, deals will come. Deals will come. So just stick with it, stay in the game, keep making offers, because that's the most important thing you can do and you absolutely control, and victories will come. Cool. See you.